and gentlemen, welcome to the Economic Briefcase, and I'm your host, Luwinda Wazoka. Today we have a very fantastic topic, but before I mention the topic, good evening, Mr. Japao.
Good evening, Doc. How are you?
How has been the week?
Very productive.
Yeah, you missed last week's program, so the viewers were calling what's happening to the rates. So dear viewers, today we have rates. You can watch us on Topstar, you can watch us on live on our Facebook page, on our YouTube page, and on our guests page. Now, before we mention who our guest today is, today we are discussing the state of Zambia's economy, the state of the economy. And there's no better person that can help us to give a balanced view about what is happening in the economy than today's guest. And today's guest is PEP President, Mr. TEMBO. Mr. TEMBO, it's good. It's a pleasure to have you.
The pleasure is mine, Doc. It's nice to be here. Good evening to all the viewers out there, and of course, good evening, Noah.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Before we go into the program, as per tradition, Director, let's see what's happening in the commodities, money market, and the capital markets.
Okay. We'll start with the average exchange rate. Let's see how the kwacha is doing against four major currencies. So the kwacha is selling against the dollar at 17 kwacha, 24 ngwe. The pound at 21 kwacha, 63 ngwe. Euro 18 kwacha, 45 ngwe. Rand 1 kwacha, 11 ngwe. On the LME, we have aluminium, which closed off trading at $2,701.50. Copper, which closed off selling at $9,455. Zinc closed off selling at $3,896. Lead, $2,143.50. Tin, $35,250. Nickel, $27,710. Crude oil prices, WTI crude closed off selling at $116.03. Brent crude closed off selling at $117. Today we added livestock prices. These this is live weight. Okay, so broiler chicken is going at 90 kwacha. Village chicken, 150 kwacha. Goat is at 800. Beef cattle, that's 35 kwacha per kg. Pigs, that's 45 kwacha per kg. That's all we have for you today.
Yeah, we've seen some interesting phenomenon. Village chicken going at 150. People eating.
Yeah, those who prefer organic food buy village chicken, but it's a bit pricey as you can see. Even the price of the chicken has
Mr. President, up. Your reaction on some of the key figures that have been.
Well, I think the major issue to note perhaps is the fact that copper is trading at almost 10,000 kwacha per metric ton. This is one of the highest prices that copper has traded at since way back during Manawasa's era. And for us as a country, Doc, I'm sure you're fully aware of the fact that we are very heavily dependent on copper exports. We have tried to diversify our economy for a very long time without much success. So we are still dependent on copper, and we are likely to be dependent on copper for a very long time to come. So what that means to the people in leadership who are managing the affairs of the nation is that when you have our major export earner trading at a very high price, we need to take advantage of that as much as possible, because it is not something that happens every day. And I find it extremely regrettable that the current administration has not taken full advantage of the high copper prices. You might wish to remember that during Manawasa's era, when copper prices were high, Manawasa proceeded to introduce something that was never known before, which was windfall tax. And the whole idea that Manawasa had in mind was to collect as much tax as possible, because he knew that copper prices would not be high for a prolonged period of time. However, you fast forward to the current regime, which is headed by President Hakainde Hichilema. The response of President Hakainde Hichilema to the high copper prices that we are witnessing today has been nothing other than a de facto tax holiday, which essentially gives the mines a reprieve in terms of payment of tax, a fair payment of tax, thereby reducing our collections as a country. And these high copper prices come once in a while. So I'm particularly very unhappy with the current policy of the current administration as far as taxing of the mining sector is concerned.
Before we dig deep into the program, viewers, we are going to open the phone lines in the next 30 minutes, or is it 20 minutes now? You can still send us your messages now on the numbers that are appearing below the screens. We'll open the lines and you'll be able to interact with us. As per tradition, a lot of people know you. I am one of the followers on Facebook. I mean, I've followed you since since a long time now. You are a public figure.
Then there's some of us who only know him from the time he became president until now. So I'm sure there are other people who would want to know where you come from.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so who's shown TEMBO?
Okay. Basically, I'm 41 years old, 42 this year. And I was born, I'm the fifth born in a family of 9, right in the middle there. It's unfortunate that I lost 3 of my brothers. So I'm only remaining with sisters at the moment. And, I grew up, I was born in Jabu village of Western Province, Chipata district. And we proceeded to go and live in Chingora. My father was a miner at Inchanga mine. And he passed on when I was about 8 years old in 1988. And I proceeded to come back to Lusaka to stay with my uncle in Mtendere compound. I went to Shtukuko Primary School in the C section of Mtendere from my grade 3 to grade 7, and then proceeded to Kablonga Boys, just nearby here, where I did my grade 8 and 9, and then went to Livingstone. I did my grade 10 to 12 at Hillcrest, and then proceeded to Copperbelt University. I did my Bachelor of Accountancy, and then joined one of the audit firms, PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I did a stint there. I was then, sponsored to do my SCCA at ZCAS. And after completing my SCCA, I decided to quit PricewaterhouseCoopers and started my own firm, Innosis. That was in 2004 when I was about 24 years old. I then worked with my firm, which I'm still working up to now. But at some point I expanded to South Africa and Botswana, and the firm was very big until 2015 when I decided to come back home so that I can contribute to the governance of the nation. So plus or minus, that's pretty much myself. In terms of family, I'm married to a very beautiful wife. I'm sure she's watching at home. She's a medical doctor by profession, Mrs. TEMBO. I've got 5 children, that is 4 girls, 1 boy. And yeah, my mother is still around. She lives in Avondale there. I'm sure she's also watching. I think that's pretty much the long and short of it. In terms of the political party, I started PEP in 2016, and it's basically a centrist political party. We believe in, a partial dose of capitalism and a partial dose of socialism. By capitalism, I mean we believe that people need to carry their own weight. We don't believe that someone should subsidize somebody else. That is the only way that we can properly distribute the resources of the world. In terms of socialism, we believe that some people are disadvantaged not by any fault of their own, and therefore they need to be assisted. not perpetually, but they need to be given a chance so that they can be able to make the best out of themselves. So we believe in a sustainable free market economy, and we are very strong in terms of patriotism. We believe that Zambia has a lot of potential, and that we haven't done a very good job exploiting our economic potential, and that what we really need is a leader who can be selfless, who can put the interests of Zambia above, the individual's own interests or the interests of a political party. Once we have that kind of leader, then we can take this country, to, very high levels economically. We don't need to suffer the way the citizens of this country are suffering. We can afford to live with the standards that Scandinavian countries actually live, like, Norway, Sweden, Finland. They don't have much in terms of resources, but they make the best of what they have. And they are one of the most developed countries in the world. We can make Zambia an example to the world with proper management of the economy.
Very few people know. Okay, now you have said it that you were at the Copperbelt University. I happen to work in the accounting and finance department as head of department where you were. And you are one of the best graduating student.
Yes.
I'm sure that's what landed you at PwC.
Yes.
Yes. What do you think has changed between the intellectual of that time and the intellectual of today? What challenges? How do you see, what challenges maybe is today's graduate facing that the graduate of yesterday was not facing? I've seen, a lot of capable youth, but when I see the way they interact on social media, in some cases it leaves much to be desired.
I think to a large extent, what is missing in the current setup is the lack of opportunity, adequate opportunities. There are a lot of graduates that we have at the moment. We have a lot of universities, very good universities. We have Mulungushi, Copperstone, Eden University, all sorts of universities. And there are a lot of brilliant kids who are graduating every year from these universities. But they don't have the opportunity to really be exposed to practice their profession. So at the end of the day, you find an engineer ends up running a hardware shop at town center, and so on and so forth. Compared to, our time, because when I graduated from Copperbelt University, in fact, when I was writing my last paper, I had about 7 job offers. I had an offer at PricewaterhouseCoopers, at Deloitte, at KPMG, at Bank of Zambia, at Citibank, at Copperbelt University itself as an SDF, and at Concola Copper Mines, KCM. So there was a huge opportunity available. Compared to this time, you find a lot of brilliant students. They graduate with a distinction, but they roam the streets. So I think that is what is missing in the current setup. And the only way we can resolve that is by, properly managing the economy, being able to expand the economy so that we can also expand the opportunities available to the kids who are graduating. And, when I look at the current approach to the management of our economy, I feel that we are not making the best of what we can as a nation. I feel that the current administration is misguided in terms of the kind of interventions this country and this economy really needs to be able to, get on the right path and be able to convert our huge economic potential into actual wealth for the benefit of the Zambian people.
Okay, there's quite something interesting. You say that PEP's ideology is both capitalistic and socialism. So how do you blend the two? Or let's say if you were given a chance to be president, because how I believe socialism is that we're talking about the tools of production, and if you're talking about capitalism, you're talking about the tools of production being
bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie and the proletariat
being in the hands of the private sector.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, for a sustainable development of the economy, we believe that you need a bit of both. Of course, you need about 80% capitalism and about 20% socialism. When you look at America, for instance, you realize that, in my view, what has made America great is the fact that it has been run by two totally different political parties. Republicans on one hand and Democrats on the other hand. Republicans are 100% capitalists. Democrats are partial socialists. And the fact that America is at one point being run by Republicans and then they give power to Democrats and then back to Republicans maintains that balance between capitalism and socialism. If you have a country which is just socialist, 100%, like Russia, the economy literally crumbles. You understand? And when you have a country which is 100% capitalist, the way we are trying to be in Zambia at the moment, then it just can't operate. Where any slight fluctuation of oil prices on the world market is passed directly to the consumer on a monthly basis. That is not sustainable. So you need, partial of either. Of course, a larger dose of capitalism and a smaller dose of socialism.
In certain sectors or in...
It needs to be timed because, for instance, look at education. When you look at the current policy of the new Dawn administration as far as education is concerned, where they believe in, giving free education, we support that. But the actual implementation, we don't agree with. Because the way they approach it is such that they believe that whether you can afford or you cannot afford to pay for your child, you are exempted. That is not sustainable because you need to look at sustainability as well. They are people, you find that they were required to pay maybe 1,000 kwacha for their pupils at school. And you find that that is money they spend on a weekend. They don't mind paying that 1,000 kwacha. So why should you exempt them? You need to allow them to pay that. You should only help people who need to be helped. That way, you'll be properly utilizing, scarce national resources. So if I was the one running the affairs of this country, yes, I would still pursue the same policy of, universal education, free education. But the way I would implement it is that, I would come up with a comprehensive social welfare system to assess people. You assess household income. How many people work in this household? Does the husband work? Yes. How much is the salary? Does the wife work? Yes. How much is the salary? How much is the combined income? Or these people, their combined income is 20,000 kwacha. How many children do they have? They've got 2 children who they send to government school. If your combined monthly income is 20,000 and you have 2 children, surely you can afford to pay 500 kwacha per month for each of your children, isn't it? Yeah. So those should pay. You look at another household. Oh, what does the husband do? No, he works, but he's a security guard. He gets paid 2,000 kwacha. What does the wife do? No, she sells at the market. She sells onion and tomato. So you can tell this household cannot sustain to pay 500 or 1,000 kwacha for their pupils in a government school. So you exempt those ones. So it needs to be targeted. When you do that, it will not provide too huge a burden on government coffers. And you'll be able to spare some resources to build extra classrooms, to hire adequate teachers, such that, schools will not be as crowded as it is today, where you've got classrooms with 130, pupils and 1 teacher. And most of the pupils, they don't even get their work marked. So it's about the approach. It's about, how effectively to deliver a particular objective. And I feel that, the current administration is not doing a good job of basically not only running education or running the economy, but basically running, all the affairs of the nation.
When we talk about, of course, we've talked about the education sector. If we talk about our major export, which is copper, so we're talking about the mining industry. What would be the approach or the blended approach that you're talking about?
So what is the status now and your approach?
Yeah. As far as mining is concerned, I must mention that for me, as an individual, I'm privileged in the sense that I've had the opportunity to live in several other countries. I've lived in Botswana, I've lived in South Africa, I've lived in Kenya. And when I was living in those countries, I had the opportunity to do work for governments, of those countries. And I had the opportunity to look at their policies, how well their policies were working, what they were doing right, in my view, what they were doing wrong. And in terms of mining policy, I think among all the countries that I'm familiar with, I think Botswana has done a very good job in terms of how they've approached the mining of their diamonds. What Botswana has done is to create a partnership with a private company, De Beers, to mine their diamonds. They created a parastatal called Botswana, which is a 50-50 parastatal. And that arrangement has been working for the past 40 years. And it works perfectly. Because on one hand, you know, De Beers has got operations in various parts of the world, including Europe. So they are exposed to cutting-edge approaches to mining, you know. So they are able to bring that on board. On the other hand, the government is able to benefit from that, but you know, before they share the dividends of their operations, you know, in the middle, government would first correct their 25% tax. You understand? So you correct, the government corrects their 25% tax, 75% of the profits remain, and then they share that. So at the end of the day, De Beers goes away with about 37.5%, and then government goes away with about 62.5% in terms of share of the profits. So the government benefits more, but then they are able to ensure that the mines are run in a sustainable manner, in a profitable manner, and in a professional manner, where you don't introduce politics. You understand? So if I was president of this country, I think I would adopt such a model, whereby we strike a deal with all the major mines that government should get at least a 50% share of the shareholding of these companies, and you know, allow flexibility to the private players to be able to drive the operations while you maintain oversight and you ensure there is no tax evasion, there is no transfer pricing. You know, it's difficult to enforce things like that from a distance as ZRA, you know, compared to when you are a shareholder, you are there, you've got people sitting on the board. You understand? So you are able to benefit at the same time, benefit from private sector, you know, expertise and competence and international exposure. So if I was running the affairs of this country, I think that would be my preferred policy in terms of the mining sector.
Let's come to finance. You know, the government wants to pursue the IMF package. I know you are one of the critics of the IMF package. What is the alternative to the IMF package, and what do you think is the current state in terms of negotiations between GRZ and various lenders and the IMF itself?
Yeah, first of all, you know, when you look at the IMF and IMF bailout package, first of all, the word bailout says it all. You know, it's designed for, for countries which are in dire stress, countries who are not able to meet their basic obligations like paying salaries for their civil servants, and they need to be bailed out. You understand? So the question then becomes, is Zambia in such a state? And my answer to that question is a definite no. Zambia is not in such a state. We are doing quite well economically. Even at the time that the new Dawn administration took over in August, we were doing reasonably well. Why? Because our major export, which is copper, is trading at very high prices on the world market. Because we are reliant on copper. We've been reliant on copper for a very long time. When copper prices go down, our economic fortunes have always been known to go down throughout the past 58 years or so that we have been independent. And when copper prices go up, our economic fortunes as a nation go up. You understand? It's only this time around, under the administration of the New Dawn, that copper prices are very high, the highest in a very long time. I think they are higher than 2007 and 8. Yes. And yet we are talking about being bailed out by the IMF. Why should we be bailed out? We don't need the IMF to bail us out. If you look at our obligations at the moment, you realize that if we were to enforce that windfall tax which the Manawasa administration introduced in 2006, we would be able to collect enough tax revenue to sort out the Euro bond which is maturing this year. We would clear it. You understand? We would clear that Euro bond. We would have sufficient resources to service our other debt obligations. We would have sufficient resources to be able to balance our budget. You understand? We would have sufficient resources, you know, in terms of income flows to be able to meet our various fiscal obligations. Only if we can tax the, you know, the mines properly. We can tax the mines based on, you know, the original windfall tax framework that Manawasa introduced. Because you must understand that in terms of a value chain for the mines were able to sustain their operations when copper prices were as low as 3,500 kwacha. In fact, the last survey which was done for the mines, which was sometime in 2011, if I'm not mistaken, established that their break-even point was a price of copper of about 2,700 per metric ton, and that anything above that, they are making a profit. So if they are breaking even at $2,700 per metric ton, and right now we saw on the screen there that copper is selling at about 9,400, and it just dropped because it was around 11,000 for a very long time. Yes. So between $2,700 per metric ton to 9,500, how much extra supernormal profit are the mines making? They're making more than $7,000 per metric ton. So what's wrong with us as a nation, as the owners of the copper, getting a share of that windfall? We should get a share. If anything, we should share that at the middle. You understand? It will not drive away investment because copper prices are doing very well. And you know, we all know why copper prices are doing well. We know they are driven by, you know, the advent of electric vehicles, where copper is a major input. And we all know that the entire world is shifting from these internal combustion engines, which are driven by petrol and diesel, to greener and, you know, more cleaner sources of energy, which is electric vehicles. And we know that this shift will take place for a very long time to come. Maybe in the next 40 to 50 years, the demand for copper will be very high, because the entire world to shift completely from these internal combustion engines to electric vehicles, it will take a while. So we know that we have the copper. We know the demand will be there for a prolonged period of time. So the question is, why should we be afraid to tell the mines to say, look, you are making, you know, supernormal profits because of the high copper prices, and we want a share of that supernormal profits. What's wrong with that? They will not run away because they know that the demand for copper is very high. They will stick around. Even if we tax them at 40%, they will stay around. We tax them at 50%, they will still be around. We move the tax to 60%, they will still be around because they will be making a profit. So why are we afraid? And we have the Minister of Finance who advances an argument that no, we are giving the mines a de facto tax holiday. I call it a de facto tax holiday because they basically made mineral royalty tax to be deductible for income tax purposes. You know, that essentially gives the mines a de facto tax holiday. You understand? So his argument was that the reason he is giving the mines a de facto tax holiday is because he wants to attract investment. When copper prices are very high, the demand worldwide is very high. You don't need to give anyone freebies to attract them to come and mine copper in Zambia. They'll come and mine copper in Zambia by themselves without any incentive. The price of copper itself is an incentive enough. You understand? So the argument advanced by the government, to me, does not make sense. Maybe it makes sense to other Zambians, but to me, it does not make sense.
When you look at the energy sector, previously we would adjust prices every 3 months. Is it every 4 months? Every 60 days? I've forgotten now. You know, time is, we're getting old.
But now it's every month.
Now it's every month. Is this good, or what is your alternative to this?
What would be the effect, actually?
Yes, what would be the effect?
It can never be good. It can never be good. It's just regrettable that, you know, I've noticed that a lot of professional associations, you know, like Zika, Zambia Institute of Chartered Accountants, the Law Association of Zambia, you know, the Economics Association of Zambia, even trade associations, you know, Zambia Association of Manufacturers, Zaki, and several other ones. They've suddenly become very timid in terms of advising on policy issues as far as government is concerned. I think the only institution, if I recollect well, that was able to speak out on this issue of you know, revising fuel prices every month was the Zambia Association of Manufacturers. And even them just made a passing statement and they kept quiet subsequent to that, which is very regrettable. What I'm not sure about is whether these institutions are afraid of the new donor administration, or I don't know, because under the PF regime they were very vocal. They were extremely vocal. Maybe they've taken an approach whereby they feel that they need to give room to the new administration to settle before they can begin to talk. I don't know, but whatever their strategy is, I think it is not doing any favors to the current administration. That said, you, Doc, you are an economist, and you know fully well that there's a concept in economics about the downward, you know, rigidity of prices. Prices will easily shoot upwards, but once they are up, even if the factors and variables which drove them up have been reversed, they have a natural rigidity to come back down. So that concept in economics is called, you know, the downward rigidity of prices. What that means is that, let's say this month, the new donor administration increases prices by 5 kwacha, and as a result of that, transport fares are revised, ABCD, things go up. Even if next month the new donor administration decides to reduce prices by 5 kwacha, back to where they were a month ago, those things which went up in price will not come down. You understand? They will not come down. So, if and I believe that Msokotwane, the Minister of Finance, is an economist as well. I believe that the President himself is an economist. So, if these people are economists and they understand these basic concepts, because these are very basic concepts, then why should they conceive an idea of revising prices on a monthly basis? It doesn't make sense. You know, previously the ERB had what they used to call the Fuel Stabilization Fund. How this fund used to operate is that when oil prices come down and there is a surplus being recorded, that surplus would be put in that fund. Similarly, if there is a fluctuation, an upward fluctuation in oil prices on the world market, or indeed any other variable which makes the cost of oil to go up, then and there is an adverse differential between the market price and the cost price, then that deficit would be offset with the Fuel Stabilization Fund, so that prices should only be revised upwards or downwards when they exceed a certain threshold. The whole idea was to maintain stability of prices. We all know how important it is to maintain stability of prices. And we have a new donor administration which is being headed by a person who is supposed to be a renowned businessman, you know, a renowned economist. And yet when you look at the quality of economic policies that are coming from this administration, you know, you flinch. You know, I even feel pity, you know, to people like Doc here who understand economic concepts and yourself. You are better off not having any idea about economics, because when you understand economics and you see what these people are doing in terms of economic policy, you know, you can have a heart attack. Yeah, that's how regrettable it is. And my hope and wish is that, you know, these people were given a 5-year mandate by the Zambian people, and it is my hope and wish that at some point, not too far from now, they'll come to a realization that their approach, their total approach to the economic management of the affairs of this nation is totally, absolutely wrong, and that they'll reach out and open up and consult with independent-minded individuals, not those individuals who will tell them what they want to hear, but independent-minded individuals, and that they'll be able to get some ideas from those independent-minded individuals and implement those ideas while they still have the mandate before 2026, to change the economic policies of this country, so that the citizens of this country can benefit from their administration. Personally, I believe that each and every administration has added value in this country. The UNIP administration did what they could, and they added immense value to this, nation. The MMD administration came, they contributed. The PF administration came, they contributed. Now is the time for the UPND administration, and it is my sincere wish that they can also contribute to the economic development of this country, so that even if tomorrow the Zambian people decide that let's give Sean TEMBO a chance, I will be able to pick up from where the UPND administration would have left off. That is why, for me, I don't sleep in terms of trying to advise my brothers and sisters in the UPND. When I started doing that, which was immediately after inauguration, a lot of people were very upset about it. But for me, because of the love I have for this country, I remained steadfast, and I kept telling them. Sometimes I'm quite harsh on them. Sometimes I'm quite soft on them. But the bottom line is that I try to advise them. And it all arises from the fact that I love this country and I want the new Dawn administration to do the best they can while they still have the mandate from the people. Yes.
So in the first quarter through the second quarter, we've seen the deceleration in the inflation rate, and also the GDP is projected to grow. What would be a comment on that?
Yeah. So when you talk about inflation, you need to look at the basis of calculating that inflation. So this is the inflation that we're talking about here is basically month on month, the previous year to this year, month on month. Mm-hmm. You understand? That is one of the approaches of calculating inflation. Each approach has got its own advantages and disadvantages. What other countries do, like South Africa and even Kenya, even Botswana, is that they do that month-on-month calculation, but they also do a cumulative average calculation of inflation. The goodness of doing a cumulative average is that it helps to eliminate the cyclical fluctuations. So when you look at Zambia's inflation, from my standpoint, you realize that starting from 2015, there was some point in time between April 2015, just after President Lungu was elected, up to around September. The kwacha kind of melted. I don't know if you remember that period. I remember it kind of melted. Mm-hmm. And when the kwacha melted, it resulted in a huge spike in inflation. Mm-hmm. Very huge spike in inflation between those months, plus or minus. Now, what that means is that when you have that high inflation and then you go to the next year, you are comparing the month when there was a spike in inflation to the next year. The next year will show a significant drop in inflation. Mm-hmm. And then when you compare to the following year, because that year, those months would have had a very low inflation rate month on month, comparing year after year, you'll find that the next year will have a huge spike. Then the next year will have a very low inflation, then a huge spike, then just like that. So you have those fluctuations. That is why when you're calculating inflation, it is advisable not to use just one approach, but to use two as a minimum, or even three approaches. And one of the key approaches that I would recommend is the cumulative average. Because the cumulative average, you'll be looking at cumulatively, we are here, then you calculate the average. What was the inflation in January, you add to February, to March, April, then you divide, and you look at the cumulative. You understand? So to me, these reductions in inflation does not really mean much. Apart from that, you realize that when you're calculating inflation, the higher the prices are, the lower the inflation rate is going to be. You understand? Mathematically speaking. So if the base price is 10 kwacha. Let's say bread is 10 kwacha. And bread goes up by 5 kwacha. It was 10 kwacha, it goes up by 5 kwacha, it's 15 kwacha. The increase there is what? 50%, isn't it? It's 50%. However, if bread is at 20 kwacha and it goes up by the same 5 kwacha, you understand? The increase there is how much?
2.5. 2.5.
So it's 5 over 20. That's
1/3.
yes.
Yeah, I think 1/3 of.
It's
So
25%.
instead of it
Yeah.
being
It's 25%.
50%, it becomes 25%.
It becomes 25%. So the increase is the same. It's 5 kwacha, isn't it? But just because prices are much higher, so any further increment, the percentage increment is lower, even if the actual quantum of the increment is the same. You understand? So at the moment, things are very expensive. So any subsequent increment, even if monetarily, in nominal terms, it's the same as previously, in percentage terms, it will be lower. So looking at inflation alone and saying that because inflation is lower, the cost of living is also going to be lower is a very wrong approach of looking at things. That is why you find that the cost of living has been increasing, and yet inflation in the past 2 or 3 months is said to have been dropping.
But it's still supported by the growth in the projected growth of our GDP.
Well, you know, projecting growth of GDP is that is a projection. So it is like guessing that I win a lottery. It doesn't mean much. You understand? Because you, where you are seated there, based on the parameters that are available, you say, I think I project the GDP growth to be 5%. Doc here, where he's seated, based on the same parameters available, you say he's projecting GDP growth to be 2%. So a projection of GDP does not mean much. Unless the actual realization of what the growth is, then that is something that you can really talk home about and take to the bank perhaps. But a mere projection wouldn't mean much from my standpoint. So, you know, where we are now, you know, I'll tell you something. When you look at economic activity, just mere observation, you realize that economic activity has really gone down. You understand? Me, I don't spend all my time, you know, in my office or in hotels or what, no. I prefer to go on the ground. I try to do most of the things myself. I go to town there in Chachacha Road and buy the hardware things I need so that I can see how people are doing and I can talk to people. I go to Kamara Market there and look at things.
We haven't opened the phone lines, but people are already calling. I think
okay, let me wrap it up.
Okay,
let me wrap it up
yes.
on the economy. Yeah. So you find that the level of economic activity there is very low. You know, before elections, the economy wasn't doing well. It wasn't doing well. And added to that is the uncertainty that came with elections. You know, elections always bring uncertainty in the economy. So that added, that compounded the economy, which was already not doing well. And then subsequent to that, when the new dawn came into office, they took forever before they could start running the economy. In terms of parastatals, in terms of the government, appointing people, they took forever. They took more than 6 months. You understand? So everything was on a further standstill. And now, that is why we are reaping, you know, these adverse effects of a really slowed down economy. And then further to that, when you look at the New Dawn approach to fighting inflation, their approach is basically to siphon out as much liquidity from the economy as possible. You understand? Siphon out as much liquidity from the economy as possible. We all know that the previous administration, the PF administration, had borrowed significantly in terms of domestic debt. But when the PF handed over power to UPND, domestic debt, when I say domestic debt, I mean the treasury bills, yes. The government bonds. Our domestic debt was around 70 billion kwacha or so. Right now, domestic debt within the past 9 months has more than doubled. We're talking about domestic debt standing at almost 170 billion.
Wow.
You understand? So domestic debt has gone up by more than 100 billion kwacha in the past 9 months, which the New Dawn has borrowed. Now, When you talk about domestic debt, you are talking about banks going to buy treasury bills and government bonds. You're talking about insurance companies going to buy those treasury bills and government bonds. So you're talking about the internal economy having the liquidity siphoned out and being kept by BOZ, Bank of Zambia. You understand? So those insurance companies, they could have lent out that money. They could have engaged in some investments. They could have done this. The money would have been circulating in the economy. But it's with the Bank of Zambia. And the Bank of Zambia, you know, is the government is keeping that money for whatever reason. And when you look at the issue of liquidity from the point of view of a common Zambian, you find that it is further compounded by the fact that government has not been paying creditors in terms of suppliers and contractors to government for the past 9 months or so. They tell these suppliers and contractors that they're doing an audit. You understand? And these are small and medium enterprises, SMEs, and they have employees. You understand? So if you rely on government to be paid so that you can pay your employees, and your employees can go to the compounds and spend some money, pay rent here, you know, buy things in a grocery, so that there's economic activity, and they're not paid, it means there's no economic activity. So that approach of siphoning money, liquidity from the economy, as a way of fighting inflation.
They are PF.
Sorry?
They are PF, that's why they are not being paid.
You know, at the end of the day, what we want is economic activity. And when you talk about economic activity, even if you pay someone who is PF and they get that money, they are not going to spend it in a PF shop only. They'll spend it in the economy. You understand? So it doesn't matter whether someone is UPND, whether someone is PF, whether someone is PEP. The bottom line is that people who are owed money by government should be paid so that they can go out there in the economy and spend that money, so that money can begin to change hands, so that they can be liquidity, so that Amaiwa came Sonda, if she makes fritters vapanga vitumbua waika pa side parody in the morning, by 10 hours vitumbua vija vifunika vakurika. You understand?
Before we open the lines, there's one thing that I want us to discuss. You know, I follow your Facebook page very religiously. It's like more like the Bible. When I wake up in the morning, I need to see what tone you have said for the day. I follow also for other politicians so that people don't feel bad that I'm just following President TEMBO. The issue of the fight against corruption, your government, you come in, you also take to task the people that are currently serving in government? Well, today, I think yesterday or today you said we have world record, no one has been arrested. Or
you know,
are we trying to arrest this?
You know, Doc, corruption needs to be fought. Yeah, because when you talk about corruption, you're talking about public resources being abused. And those public resources could have been used to improve the standards of living of the people.
Exactly.
So there is no leader, there is no president who can talk about improving the standards of living of the people without talking about fighting corruption. Because you need those resources which are being taken illegally by a select few for their individual benefit. So that, yes, so that you can utilize those resources for the benefit of the majority.
The proletariat.
But
they are stealing from the proletariat.
Yes, but the fight against corruption needs to be done in a fair and equitable manner. That is what is key, and that is what is missing from the current administration. You know, to ensure that the fight is done in a fair and equitable manner, where the president does not attach emotions. It doesn't become a personal fight, whereby if the court gets Bowman Lusambo's house, then the leadership is happy. When the court decides that no, actually, I think it's premature to get Bowman Lusambo's house at this point, let us allow the trial to take place, and then once a verdict is pronounced, then we can make a decision at that time. So Bowman Lusambo, you can move back into your house. And then you find that the president is upset. You understand? He's upset. He posts something and says, you know, like we'll catch you. You know, it shouldn't be a personal fight. Allow law enforcement agencies to do their work. Under my administration, law enforcement agencies will do their work. I will not be talking about the issue of corruption. Apart from at my inauguration, I'll talk about it at my inauguration. After that, I'll let law enforcement do their job without having to talk about the issue of corruption fight every day, you know, giving unnecessary pressure to law enforcement. Because you know what happens? If you give unnecessary pressure to law enforcement, they will be forced to go an extra mile to please you. Today I was reading in the one of the papers where the Anti-Corruption Commission went and seized property of that gentleman who was exhumed, you know, who was exhumed, the gentleman who passed on, you know. So now, how can you seize the property of a dead person? Because when you seize property from someone, you are accusing that person of a crime, isn't it? So how can you accuse a dead person of a crime? How is a dead person going to defend themselves? Because the whole idea, Noah, of accusing you with a crime in a democratic society like ours is to allow you to exculpate yourself. We are going to accuse you and say, Mr. Noah Njapau, you did ABCD. Can you exculpate yourself? And you go to court. When you go to court, the prosecution will present their case. No, on this day, you did this and that and that. You corrupted this government official. You were awarded this tender. And that tender, you bought a house, you bought a car, you did what. That is why we seized that house. That is why we seized that car. You understand? Can you exculpate yourself? And then you, as Mr. Noah Njapau, you tell the court and say, no, me, that tender, I own it fairly and squarely. That person you are saying I influenced, I only met him, he's my former classmate, we didn't talk about anything regarding the tender, I was just greeting him. You are exculpating yourself. But if you are not there, then who is going to explain that? And you are going to the estate of that person and getting the property which is with the widow now. Doc, that is witchcraft. And what the new Dawn administration is doing right now is not fighting corruption. They are exercising witchcraft. It is all about retribution. It is all about revenge. And when the fight against corruption is laced with those foreign elements of, you know, revenge, retribution, witchcraft, then it stops being a fight against corruption. So yes, to answer your question, yes. Under my administration, we are going to fight corruption, but we are not going to personalize the fight. We allow it to be fair and equitable. And you know why it's important to treat people fairly and equitably when you are in a position of power? Because when you are no longer in a position of power, you would want other people to also treat you fairly and equitably. You understand? Yes. So it is only fair that we treat others fair, so that when our time comes, we can also be treated fair. How would you feel someone comes to your place without any trial, without anything, just a mere accusation? You are kicked out of your house. People are going through the panties of your wife, packing them in a plastic bag. You know, that violation of privacy. How would you feel? You haven't been convicted of any crime in a court of law. Just a mere accusation by an officer from Anti-Corruption Commission. You should be removed from your house without proving anything. Just an allegation. Because by removing you from your house, you are being punished. You understand? You are being punished. You are going to become a destitute. So why should you be punished when you have not been convicted of a crime yet? You know, you need to be convicted of a crime, then punished. Not punished and then taken to court to be proven guilty. That is totally wrong. So the whole approach of President Hakainde Hichilema in the fight against corruption, but not just the fight against corruption, even just basic law enforcement. You are talking about the approach of getting someone, taking them all the way to Rukuru and dumping them there. Getting someone, taking them all the way to Solwezi, dumping them there. Under the pretext that an allegation has been made against you. Just a mere allegation. Without any opportunity for the police to investigate that allegation. You know, I worked as a police officer for a long time. When there's an allegation, someone abuera pa police. Oh, na complaint, amuna wanga wanimenya, muremba mobibu, maremba, oh, wakumenya.
To people.
Atmenya.
You even know the terms.
Yes. Atmenya. Oh, Tony Kapag. Oh, na paribembo. Oh, no one knows what wakumenya. Nesna mana wanga. Oh, mana wana na how many years? 5 years. Oh, okay. Amai embezangwa panja. Then you start interviewing the child. Iwe, amai wako wamenya. what happened? Ah, no. You understand? So you're able to get to the bottom of the issue. You can't just munsaga boye police abwera na complaint. No, vanimenya muna. Oh, wakumenyani matenga na mfuti tienti kawagwira muna. Without investigating, without any basic investigation. What kind of a police force is that? That is what is exactly happening under the new Dawn administration. Someone makes a complaint against you in Rukuru. There is no investigation which is done to establish if a prima facie case exists for you to be arrested, provided there is a complaint against you. Then nishkwasira chirufe tayari tie kurukuru, he's abandoned into a vehicle and left in Rukuru. What kind of an administration is that? And to me, speaking for myself, I'm extremely, disappointed with the just the manner President Hakainde Hichilema is running the affairs of the nation. Because even if he is my political opponent, I had a certain level of expectation in terms of delivery. I didn't have a huge expectation because having worked with him in the alliance, I knew he had certain limitations. But I didn't expect him to underperform to these levels that he's underperforming right now. So I'm very, very disappointed. There are just basic things you can get right. You understand? Treat other people the way you would want to be treated when you are no longer in a powerful position. When others are in a powerful position, how would you like to be treated? That is exactly the way you must treat others.
You're watching Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. Camnet TV, not just another channel. At this point, we will open the phone lines. Maybe we start with the messages. Director, just throw us one or two messages. Colleagues, after the messages, you can call. Good evening, Dr. Wazoka, Mr. Japao, and Mr. Tembo. Nice program and good thought on the education idea. I second that free education that should have been completely for the vulnerable. Those who have the capacity should pay the school fees. That's the best way to create unity. Currently, free education policy is being taken advantage of by the already well-to-do. TEMBO. Good evening, Mr. President. Surely, how can JRZ own 10% and 20% shares of our own birthright? What's your take on Vedanta coming back? Also, Mr. President, is right surely to commission president without the projects, without acknowledging the previous initiators or who started them? Kalunga, Lake from Osaka. Good evening. I am an ordinary Zambian, age 58, no economic qualification, only general knowledge. With these fuel/dollar fluctuations, it is difficult to plan. This is another message, Director. No. Good evening. Yes, it's the same one. Good evening. I'm an ordinary Zambian, age 58, no economic qualification, only general knowledge. With these fuel/dollar fluctuations, it's difficult to plan. You buy something in Forex, by the time it lands, the price is something else. For a farmer, it should be even worse. Why can't I provide an annual average of the Forex and fuel costs so that it becomes easier for me to plan? Meaning I fix the dollar and the fuel cost for the entire year. This will make me plan effectively. Just a thought, you, the technocrats, want these parameters to flip-flop. Sure. RBM. Your comments, Vedanta?
Well, personally, I feel Vedanta really misbehaved when they were given an opportunity to run KCM, and they do not need to be brought back. When you really look at it, there are a lot of other investors that we can utilize. And in terms of the reasons that we need to advance in terms of kicking out Vedanta, you must remember that they polluted Kafue River, and they were convicted of that offense in a London High Court. So we have that as a very strong basis. We don't need to talk about the other things we can't substantiate, like, not paying local contractors, this and that, which are neither here or there. We can just stick to the fact that they did not, respect the environmental laws of our country. And on that basis, they need to go and go for good. So Vedanta must never come back.
I think I heard our first caller there.
Do we have a call?
Oh, yes, am I Camnet TV?
Yes, Camnet TV. Your name and where you're calling from?
my name is William Soto. I'm calling you from Lusaka.
Yes, sir, you can go ahead with your contribution.
I'm enjoying the program.
Thank you.
We're having, what can I say, worthwhile information being aired. I want to get a comment from the Economic Advisory Council. I'm asking whether he approves my thought about this organization. It's not just an extra cost on the budget of the nation, because I see that the purpose of this organization is just a replication of what we can see institutions like the Ministry of Finance and National Planning, Zambia Development Agency, Zambia Chamber of Commerce. I'm asking myself, what can just the smell be utilized from these organizations I've just mentioned in order to help plan on how our economy can become viable? That's my first question, sir. Number two, I just have a concern about the judicial processes in this country. They seem not to be they seem not to be efficient. You find a simple court case will take you 7 months after filing, no appearance. It's just adjournment after adjournment. How do you expect a populace to be productive if there being no records to experience the justice they need to experience through the institution? I end my thoughts there, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You've heard the first comment was on
The Economic Advisory Council.
yes.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I think that creates unnecessary bureaucracy and duplication, because remember, we have the Ministry of Finance, and we have those interministerial committees which are made up of officials from different ministries who are responsible for, formulating some of these economic policies. And then, the ministry can interact with various professional and trade associations. And, we've got institutions like Zaki and so on and so forth. So to have another, body, the so-called Economic Advisory Council, to be chaired by the president, in my view, creates a lot of unnecessary duplication. And under my administration, I would not have such a setup. Coming to the second question, the issue of our judicial systems. At the end of the day, people don't usually pay much attention to this fact, but the efficiency of the judiciary has a huge impact on the overall economic welfare of a nation. If you have an efficient judiciary, if you have a fair and equitable judiciary, then it will drive economic growth. You understand? It will drive economic growth. And when you go to countries like, even South Africa, let's not go very far like the US, just South Africa, their judicial system is very efficient. Matters are disposed of on a timely basis. And it is one of the major drivers of the economy, because even investors, when they are considering where to invest, they will look at that as a key consideration. And at the end of the day, if you cannot resolve economic disputes, trade disputes, or social disputes on a timely basis, then there's very little incentive to really invest in such a country. And at the end of the day, when you look at our judiciary, you find that most of the judgments that they pass them so late that they are not effectual. They are rendered academic, so to speak. So I think that is, a matter that requires proper reform. And I heard the statement that the new Chief Justice actually issued when he was being inaugurated, that he is going to introduce judicial reforms, although his statement lacked in specificity. But we need overriding judicial reforms. Judges and other judicial officers, whether magistrates or justices, should not have an open check in terms of the time they can take to dispose of a particular matter or the time they can take to write a judgment. You know, there are certain cases which have gone to trial, everything concluded, and the only thing remaining is for the judicial officer to issue a judgment, to write a judgment. And that goes on for 2 years. 2 years. I remember very vividly President Godfrey Mianda of Heritage Party. At some point, he decided to sue the High Court for failing to issue a judgment. Of course, his matter was subsequently thrown out on the basis that the High Court cannot be sued. But that exemplifies the levels of frustration in the population, you know, where a litigant finally decides to sue the court for failing to issue a judgment. So we have a long way to go there. But we need people who have the vision of how the judiciary should operate like, you know, who have the competency to drive those reforms, who have the backbone to be able to stand firm and resist the, you know, the forces from those who benefit from the current ineffective setup. Because there are a lot of people who benefit from the current inefficient judiciary. And when you try to reform the judiciary, there will be a lot of people who are going to fight you. So you need to have the backbone to be able to drive those reforms. And you need such a president at the end of the day. So it remains to be seen whether, you know, the current president has that backbone, whether he has that competence, whether he has that vision necessary to drive the much needed reforms in the judiciary.
That's a very, very interesting connection between the judiciary and the economic growth. It reminds me of the superstructure, you know, where you talk about the judicial system, policies, laws, religion as driving factors of economic development and economic growth. And that's very, very brilliant.
You politicians, what's your relationship between your party and other opposition political parties with regards to economic development and your relationship with the ruling government? We've seen a lot of hostility. I had some hopes that probably now things would have changed, having had a party that had been in opposition for like 20 years. I thought they learned the lessons of how ruling government should not interact with the opposition, maybe to extend an olive branch, or you know, to sit and dialogue and have multi-partisan decisions on national key issues. One of the persons that wrote a message mentioned about you know, even inviting other people to the launch of projects. What is the environment in the political space vis-a-vis economic development also?
I think the challenge we have in our country is that most of our leaders are very narrow-minded. They've got an exaggerated sense of self-importance. When they're in a position of power, they think they're going to be there forever. And when you're outside, you do think you've learned some lessons about the mistakes that a particular regime is doing. But when people go there, they make the same mistakes again, and you wonder what really is happening. So there is a lot of unnecessary animosity between the ruling party and us in the opposition. And you know, the ruling party is the one which is supposed to be the big brother, to extend an olive branch to the opposition and treat the opposition with respect, and consult the opposition so that they can borrow as many ideas as possible and try to implement those ideas for the benefit of our people. But you find that, for instance, the current administration, very early in the current administration's tenure, there was an event at State House, and they invited the opposition. I can't remember what that event was, but it was maybe Independence Day. It should be Independence Day. They invited leaders of the opposition. For one reason or the other, I had another engagement. So,
Good evening.
Sorry, Mr. President. Good evening.
Good evening.
Your name and where you're calling from?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Luansha.
Mwaisha ni
That's
Kulwansho.
is my name.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, two things. Free education versus the economy. The way I look at it, I support actually what Mr. TEMBO has said there. In light of what is happening. Now, when you talk about free education in this economy, and you compare it to the type of economy that was there during KK, you find that the economy at that particular time was ticking. And you look at the population. The population was about 9 million. And so free education was attainable. University education was free for everyone. After all, there was only one university. But look at this time. So many universities. Private universities are also everywhere. How do you provide free education? And the truth is not attainable and not even sustainable. That's what I think. That's why it should be selective. Where you are both those who are vulnerable, give them free education. Because even right now, if you look at the boarding schools, the fees are still being paid. So what is free there? And the boarding schools, you have both primary schools, some of them, and secondary schools. So this thing, I think it's a bit political other than with the economics. Number two, look at the employment. You find that we are talking about employing 10,000 or 11,000 health workers, 30,000 teachers. Now, you have former teachers who are not paid their dues, thousands of them, starting from way back, maybe 2007, 10 up to now. And these are the people who need the money. So how do you pay new teachers? You haven't paid those who retired way back. So how do you balance this in the economy? Maybe you have better answers to this, you economists. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Recruitment versus the economy.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I think it comes down to, sustainability. It's well and good to do these things and say we are going to recruit so many teachers, we are going to give free education, we're going to do this, we're going to increase CDF. The question is, how sustainable is that? Can you do that on, an annual basis and sustain it? And also, what are the other competing needs of the nation? Because at any given time, you have competing needs. So you always need to try and ensure that you balance the equation and not just, be tunnel visioned towards a particular matter, at the expense of several other important issues. But Doc, allow me to just further, highlight on that issue I was talking about,
Yes.
on cooperation, because that is quite cardinal between the opposition and the government. So during that event, during independence last year, the president invited a lot of people, opposition leaders, including myself. And me, I didn't manage to go to State House, but those who managed to go to State House, there was a table for opposition leaders, and then there was tables for UPND officials, councillors, And when the president was going around the tables, he went through and greeted everybody on all the other tables, apart from the table where there were opposition leaders. You understand? Now, when you have a president who is that petty towards the opposition, how do you expect him to be able to engage the opposition and be able to share ideas for the benefit of our people? It can't happen. You understand? For me, when I become president of this country, whenever that is going to be, but when I become president of this country, I'll treat the people in the opposition as my friends, as my colleagues. You understand? I'll not treat them as arch rivals, as if we were once married to one woman. You understand? It's totally unnecessary. These are people whom you can learn something from. And you treat them, when you respect them, they will respect you. And at the end of the day, you must remember that it is you who has the honors to run the affairs of the nation. So when you borrow ideas from them and you implement them, you succeed, the Zambian people will clap for you as president and not them in opposition. So you always stand to win. There is no benefit that can accrue to a sitting president by being antagonistic to the people in opposition. Nothing whatsoever. So you've got one president after the other. Whenever they are sent to the presidency, they are antagonistic to the opposition. And then they fall down and, crash land with a huge thud. And then another one goes there again, they are antagonistic to people in opposition. And then again they fall down. And nobody learns a lesson, which is totally, regrettable.
I've been following your page, and I've noticed that from say August to February, January, February, the number of insults that used to fly on your page were very high.
And I've reduced now.
Now you hardly find insults. It has become more interactive, and I think people are able to understand. How do you withstand such pressure? I've also been in the public space. Sometimes it gets to my nerves, and I just want to explode. But how do you withstand that pressure? Yeah. How does your family, your mother, it's people on Facebook and in the countries that don't know that people in public space also have parents who follow things. Yeah. And when a person is in public space, they also have a family. They also have the same respect that other parents would give to the people that are insulting. Because the people that are insulting, immediately you mention their parents, they become very agitated, but when they are mentioning your parents, it's okay. So how do you manage to withstand that pressure, and...
Yeah, at the end of the day, Doc, being an opposition leader is something of a sacrifice, a personal sacrifice, a family sacrifice, and, it is something that you need to really think critically about before you do. But once you make the decision, you need to be fully aware of what it means. It basically means that you can be arrested anytime. It basically means that the people you think you are speaking on behalf of can insult you and insult your parents anytime. It basically means a lot of things. So when you think about it and you reflect on it before you venture into politics, opposition politics, then you'll be more ready to handle such. So for me, I had no illusions of what it meant to be an opposition leader. And so when I became an opposition leader, and then the things I expected started happening, they didn't come as a surprise. So you kind of develop a natural thick skin with the passage of time. Of course, at the beginning, it's more difficult to, withstand that. But now I think we are veterans now. I think we can handle anything. What is important is that your personal conviction. If you are convinced from deep down your heart that what you are doing is right and that it is for the benefit of the nation, then you have a happy soul, and that is refreshing in its own. For me, I've always believed that everything I talk about is for the benefit of this country, and it does not matter whether I do not make it to become president of Zambia, but I believe that my contributions would have made a difference and would have made a positive impact, to the overall well-being of this nation. At the end of the day, you need to find ways to put forward what you are putting forward in a palatable way. you can add some humor. You know, I would add some humor. There are times when, you know, you know, there are times when you are frustrated about certain actions, and then you come out with all guns blazing, and you know, you risk being arrested. But you can't you can't be an effective opposition leader if you are afraid of being arrested, because that's an occupational hazard. Provided you have that, you know, personal conviction that what you are doing is the right thing, and that it's for the benefit, you know, of the Zambian people and of the nation, then even if you are arrested and taken wherever they want to take you, you have a free conscience, and you'll be happy inside, even if you might be sad outside.
In terms of being arrested, I know in the PF, under PF regime, you are a veteran of the police.
Even under the current administration, they always send call-outs. And of course, in the PF, you know, what the new Dawn is doing now is what the PF took maybe 6-7 years to start doing. When the PF came into office, for the first 5-6 years, I think they were...
Good evening.
I have a caller.
I have a caller. Good evening, sir. Your name and where are you calling from?
Good evening. I'm William Sator. I called earlier on.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. William.
Good evening.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr.
Yeah,
William.
I called earlier on, and apparently when I was now about, I called earlier on and asked 2 questions. But when I was about to get the feedback now about my TV says, apparently you froze, and we could not hear anything. I would like to find out where the offices for President TEMBO are. Yes, or maybe a contact line that you can share so that we can be able to get guidance with one clarity about particular matters.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your offices, I think you should start paying royalties to come.
Yeah, no, our secretariat is at Arcades. We are at Pangea Office Park, just near the Puma filling station at Arcades. There's a grass building. You see some party vehicles parked in the car park, painted yellow. For the contact details, so what we are doing now is that, you know, we've been inundated with a lot of interest from various sections of society. A lot of people want to join our party. So we realized that we were not able to cope with the interest and to respond to people's interest on a timely basis. So what we decided to do is to embark on a project to computerize the membership registration process. So we are launching our website, our new website, on the 17th of this month. And that website will basically allow you to register online, and you'll be able to choose your location, your ward, constituency, and district, province. And then if you want to apply for any interim position, you can apply. So if you want to apply for constituency secretary, you can apply. And then you list your qualification, your experience, whether you've been in politics before or not. And then there will be administrators in the back office who will be able to review those applications and then get in touch with you. We believe that that system will be more effective than the manual system, because we've disappointed a lot of people. You know, we receive on Facebook, we receive more than 1,000 messages per day. On WhatsApp, we receive again more than 1,000 messages per day. And emails, again, we receive several messages. So just to have the manpower to keep up with that has not been possible. So in view of the new approach of registering, we have restricted basically sharing the number, even for the president, because I used to share my number previously on media platforms, but you know, you end up being inundated with a lot of calls, and at the end of the day, you cannot, you know, keep up. Yeah. So I think the best way to interact is through our website, as well as through our page and also through our structures. So when you go to our website, it will show you which locations have our physical offices. So you can be able to identify the nearest office to where you are. So if you're in Rwanda, they'll tell you, oh, in Rwanda we have an office at the city center along this street. So you can easily walk there. So I think let us embrace technology and use that approach as the most effective way of being able to interact with our supporters.
One last question. Your way of politics seems to have changed.
The caller, I think our last caller. Yes, your name and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from
From where? Mfrira.
I'm saying about.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, please. I wanted to ask with TEMBO. I remember.
Just switch off your TV. Your TV so that we don't get feedback. Hello? We've lost that one?
Yes.
You can ask, maybe we can pick the last one after you and then we can wind up.
Yes, it seems, I have noticed, I think people have noticed that your way of politics has changed after elections.
For the better or for the worse?
Well, for the better, in terms of how your numbers have grown, as Doc put it, and also some people seem to find it a bit different from how you used to do it, which is might be appealing for some and not.
Mr.
For another group.
Before. Hello, your name and where you're calling from?
Hello?
Yes, we can get you your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, I'm calling from you. I'm calling from within Lusaka.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I would like to commend the tech president, I think, for the well-articulated issues. I've been a keen follower, I think, on his Facebook page, and I must confess that I've come access to love the way and the manner in which he has created issues. And for that, we would love to commend you, sir. You are doing a tremendous job in providing the checks and balances, I think, to the current government. Truthfully speaking, things are not okay in the country. And it would be very unfair, I think, for the current regime to try and put up a gift here and a blind eye on what is happening. Yeah, so your stand is good and you mean well for the country. So for that, I must commend you. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Director, before we react to this, let's go to the last messages so that we can close up. I think that was our last caller. Let's comment on the fact that the president does not want to stay in State House. My question is, how is on low inflation and high cost of living? What is the correlation? This one is from Mazabuka. Good evening, panel. Enjoying the program. Mr. Tembo, what do you think about the UPND alliance? Does it still exist? H. Ngoma. Good evening, Doc, Mr. Japao, and His Excellency, Mr. Sean Tembo. When is Zambia going to develop by allowing GVT and Zambian people owning economic programs but not benefiting themselves getting money from foreign investors, like we have seen here in Chingola? Totally corruption. We have said no to Vedanta, but UPND cadres, they have put themselves first instead of us poor Zambians. We want all mines to start being run by government, and that's poor Zambians, Venfeli from Chingola. What are the comments on advice by IMF encouraging the governments to cushion on the high cost of living? I think those messages, Mr. Japao's, and your last comments.
Yeah, I'll start with Mr.
Japao, yes.
My comment on
the shift in our approach to providing checks and balances, perhaps. Yeah, you know, time, with the passage of time, you need to adjust, you know, the way things are done, just to ensure that you are more effective and you are more efficient. And, you know, previously, under the PF regime, most of our checks and balances used to be in the form of long statements, which we would issue about twice a week. And now we have realized that most people don't have the time to read very long statements. And we've kind of summarized our messages, and we post them more frequently during the course of the day. And we only write those long statements or articles maybe once in 2 weeks. So that has been some change in the approach based on the available audience as well. And in terms of you know, being firm on the government, I think we were firm under the PF government, and that is the reason why we were assaulted. If you remember, we were assaulted in Cairo Road.
Yes.
You know, our colleagues in the UPND often try to put across a false narrative that we were very soft on the PF, and now we've suddenly become hard on the UPND administration. But as PEP, we have always been, you know, hard on any given government, whether the PF or the current administration, for the simple reason that for any government in office, the only language that they understand is when you are firm and strong. I wouldn't want to use the word militant because it might carry certain connotations, but that's the language they understand. If you are too soft on them, you'll be speaking around there, no one will even pay attention to what you're saying. So that is the only reason why we tend to be very strong, very firm. Of course, that carries its own risks. You know, you can be arrested, you can be attacked, you can be assaulted, but you know, at the end of the day, that's an occupational hazard. It comes with the nature of the job of being an opposition leader. Coming to very interesting submissions, which have been made via text, I think most important perhaps is the issue of us Zambians being spectators in our economy, whereby, you know, foreigners come, they make money, we work for them, they pay us peanuts, and then they go away with the millions while we remain spectators. Whereas in the region, you'll find that most countries, the wealth of most countries in the region is in the hands of the people themselves. When you look at South Africa, the rich people, the billionaires, are indigenous South Africans, both white and black, as well as Indian. You go to Zimbabwe, the people who own the gold mines, the diamond mines, are indigenous Zimbabweans. You go to Botswana, the richest people in Botswana are indigenous Botswana. You understand? The same is applicable in Tanzania. The richest guy in Tanzania is a Tanzanian. And most of the guys doing well in Tanzania are Tanzanians. But here in Zambia, there are very few, extremely few people who are indigenous and they are doing well locally for a number of reasons. Number one, the government does not facilitate for a common Zambian to be able to prosper. You understand? Because, first of all, we don't have access to capital. You know, most of our people work, they have formal jobs, but the salaries they get are so small that when they meet their obligations and help relatives, they remain with nothing. So they don't have savings. You know, in other countries, it is savings which people eventually use to be able to start a business. It's either they use savings or they go and borrow at the bank. But in Zambia, the interest rates are very high. You find that annual rate for a mortgage or an asset finance is about 35–40% in a commercial bank. You look at South Africa, it's around average, lending rates is about 8%. Botswana about 8.5%. Namibia about 7.5%. So we can't borrow and we can't save to start a business. That leaves us in a very exposed position. There are certain ideas that have been, conceived by, successive governments, but those ideas have not been properly implemented. Take, for instance, the Citizen Economic Empowerment Commission, CEC. It's supposed to give reasonably priced access to finance to common Zambians. But you go to CEC, you look at their interest rates, they are comparable to other microfinance. So what are you trying to do? And also their lending practices, instead of giving loans, small loans to a lot of Zambians so that as many people as possible can benefit, and also as a way of diversifying their own portfolio to reduce the risk of default. They give huge loans to a few Zambians. Some people get as much as 50 million. Someone is getting 50 million to go and set up a lodge in Siavonga, and yet that person has never even run a 2-roomed guest house in Karingaringa. And that project, 2 or 3 years, it goes under. They go and try to repossess, there's nothing to repossess. All that money goes under. So we have certain ideas of what we can do to try and empower our people, but those ideas are often very poorly implemented. But we need a change of approach. And personally, I was hopeful that the current administration would bring about that change. But it has become very apparent to me, and I believe to most Zambians by now, that there is not much difference between the current administration and all the other previous administrations who have failed to really properly empower the Zambian people so that we can own our wealth. We can stop being spectators to foreigners who come in this country and enrich themselves and then go away, leaving us as destitute as they found us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njapao. Your last observations before we close this wonderful program.
It has been an interesting program with the President. I would just like to encourage the viewers to join us again for another program next week where we'll be talking about the fintech industry and its contribution to the economy.
Mr. President, your last remarks?
Yes, I think so far I would like to thank the Zambian people for the support that they have given us. Since August, we have been very committed to providing checks and balances as well as alternative solutions to national problems. And initially, our messages were not being received very well. But with the passage of time, I think the majority of the Zambian people have come to the realization that we mean well for this country. We are not just power hungry. We want to assist the government of the day for them to be able to achieve their objectives so that the government, or rather so that the Zambian people can benefit. But also we want to be ready to govern the affairs of this nation and ensure that Zambians are able to realize their dream of being able to live a decent life. Because when you look at this country, Doc, as well as now, you realize that we have everything that we need in every sector. Talk about mining. We have precious metals like gold in Kasenseri, diamonds in other parts of the country, emeralds in most of Copperbelt province, Rufanyama there. We have base metals like copper, cobalt, manganese. Most of central province is manganese. So mining sector, we have huge potential. You look at the tourism sector, we have exotic lakes, in almost each and every province. We've got Lake Kariba, we have Lake Mweru, we have Lake Bangweulu, we have Lake Tanganyika. These are exotic lakes. I don't know if you've been to Samfya.
Yes,
key tourist destinations. We have well-stocked national parks, with all sorts of species of animals. When you look at other countries in the region who are doing very well in terms of tourism, they've got very limited tourism assets. You talk about Botswana, they only have one national park. the Chove National Park. You talk about Kenya, they've got very restricted tourism assets, but they're able to utilize their tourism assets and generate 10, 15 times more tourism revenue from their limited tourism assets than we're able to. You understand? So the question is, why? Why can't we exploit our tourism assets? Why can't we exploit our mining potential? You look at agriculture, we have the most arable land in the region. Very good land, suitable for agriculture. You look at other countries in the region, let's say Malawi. Malawi is far much smaller than us, but they produce more sugar, about 8 times more sugar than us. They produce about 7 times more tobacco than us. And when you look at Malawi, it's the size of Western Province. And 1/3 of Malawi is a lake. The other third is mountains. So the portion of Malawi which is available for arable agriculture is very, very small. But how are they able to produce 7 times more tobacco than us? You know, they are able to produce about almost 9 times more tea. In those mountains, they just didn't give up and said, oh, these are mountains. They planted a lot of tea plantations there. And they are a major exporter of tea in the region. Malawans don't have much mining. You understand? They don't have much minerals. But the size of the Malawian economy is comparable to the size of the Zambian economy, despite our huge potential in almost every sector. The question is why? Why can't we properly exploit the potential that we have? Why can't we convert the economic potential into actual wealth for the benefit of the Zambian people? Why? What is the missing link? And in my view, the missing link is a competent president. We always think that maybe the one who has come now is competent enough, is going to get the job done, but they end up not being the right person. So the Zambian people have a choice to make. They need to make sure that come 2026, they elect a president who has the vision, the passion, the determination to turn the fortunes of this country around, to convert the economic potential that we have into actual wealth for the benefit of the people. Potential by itself is meaningless unless and until it is converted into wealth.
Well, you've been watching Economic Briefcase on Camnet TV. Our guest today was Mr. Sean TEMBO, President of PEP. My co-host, Mr. Noanja Pao. Today we are discussing the state of Zambia's economy. See you next week, same time. We'll be discussing the fintech industry. Continue watching Economic Briefcase. Continue watching Camnet TV, because Camnet TV is not just another channel. Bye-bye.